Hey guys, welcome back to Gatsu Gaming. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Survival Hunter. Just going to take a look at the talents and the abilities a little bit here. I spent a little bit of time playing Survival Hunter over the past couple of days, and I found some very interesting builds you can play. I'll have some gameplay footage linked up as well, recorded that here last night. So let's just take a look here at our spellbook first. So first up, we have Aspect of the Cheetah. We still have our 90% movement speed for 3 seconds, then 30% for another 9 seconds. Good whenever you gotta get across a room very quickly, but your disengage is somehow on cooldown. You'll definitely get a lot of use out of this. Aspect of the Eagle. With the rework to Survival, Aspect of the Eagle went from being a damage increase to increasing the range of your Raptor Strike to 40 yards for 15 seconds. This seems really awkward to most people, and it is, because you're not going to pop this all the time. This is literally a cooldown you use when you have to be out of range, or whenever you need to hit something that's, across the room and, like an ad that spawns. It's really useful for picking up those extra ads, even with Misdirect, because you still have Misdirect as a Survival Hunter. Aspect of the Turtle here, still have our defensive. It deflects all attacks and reduces all damage you take by 30% for 8 seconds. This is a huge nerf to the amount of damage that it blocks. This is definitely going to come into play in Mythic Plus a little bit. But again, this is still, just the, bread and butter, oh god, I gotta survive now, use my Aspect of the Turtle. It is only 3-minute CD still, so it is something you can't just pop willy-nilly. So right here I have Binding Shot. This is a talent, of course. Still works exactly the same way as it does in live. 45-second CD, 30-yard range. With this, though, it's in a really interesting talent row, and you'll see that shortly. So here, Butchery is also a talent. This replaces Carve. We'll go over Butchery in a little bit, but Carve is pretty much the same thing, just only a cone in front of you. Still have our Colpeticore. I have a couple of pets here. I can only summon one of them because, unfortunately, I didn't think ahead when I was playing Survival, and have most of my exotic pets here whenever I'm running Beast Mastery. Coordinated Assault is the new DPS cooldown for Survival. You and your pet attack as one, increasing all damage you both deal by 20% for 20 seconds. While Coordinated Assault is active, Kill Command's chance to reset is increased by 25%. You did hear that right, Kill Command in Survival. It threw me off quite a bit too when I first started playing this, but it's very interesting, and getting an extra 20% damage on a 2-minute CD may not seem like much, but with the way the damage scales, and because it's you and your pet, it's pretty impressive. Still have Disengage here. 20-second cooldown. You'll notice that the tooltip is incredibly small now. It just says leap backwards. It doesn't have anything listed on it whatsoever as to how far that is. It is still the same range. They haven't messed with Disengage's distance or anything. Eagle Eye here, only really used to, poke around and see if there's a rare up or something. Have never actually put this on a bar. I've used it a couple of times, but I've always pulled it out of my spellbook to do so. Exhilaration heals you for 30% of your health and 100% of your pet's maximum health. It's on a 2-minute CD. There are talents to reduce the cooldown on it. This is our, oh crap, better save myself. It's basically renewal, I believe, for druids, except we have it on a shorter cooldown. Still have Feign Death, 30-second cooldown, lasts up to 6 minutes, and you feign death, tricking enemies into ignoring you. That also might stop people from looking at you in PvP, and another way to make sure that you don't die whenever your group screws up a mechanic, hopefully. Flanking Strike, this is also a talent, so we're just going to skip that for right now. Still have Flare, find those hidden and invisible enemies within that area for 20 seconds. There's quite a few quests where there's stealth mobs, and quite a few dungeons where there's stealth mobs. So Flare's going to get a little bit of a workout now, which is pretty cool. Still have Freezing Trap, 30-second CD, 1-minute duration, incapacitate on that freeze trap there. Damage will break it immediately, and you can only have one trap active. The trap sticks around for a minute, though, so you can plan it out a little bit ahead of time. Harpoon is essentially our charge, so to speak. Harpoon is a 5 to 30-yard range on a 20-second cooldown. Throws a harpoon at the enemy, roots them in place for 3 seconds, and pulls you right to them. This is incredibly useful whenever you're fighting random mobs in dungeons, or if you need to stop an enemy from getting away. Harpoon is really good at getting you to that mob and just, you know, saving yourself from that sentry in, say, Court of Stars. This will be really fun during pre-patch as well. Intimidation is now baseline for survival. It just commands your pet to stun the target for 5 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown. Super useful, very, very long stun duration, and this is great utility for hunters. I'm very glad to see this. Kill command, 4.9 second cooldown. It is affected by haste. I believe it starts at about 6 seconds. 50-yard range. Give the command to kill, causing your pet to savagely deal 551 damage to the enemy. This has a 25% chance to immediately reset its cooldown. During your coordinated assault buff, that actually does go up to 50%, so you can end up spamming kill command quite a bit. Whether or not that is optimal is 100% open to interpretation and testing. We haven't seen tuning just yet, but it is really fun to have kill command whenever you have to disengage out. You can still be doing damage, even if you don't have Aspect of the Eagle up. Now, my pet is a cunning pet, so I have Master's Call, 45-second cooldown. Your pet removes all root and movement impairing effects from itself and a friendly target, and grants immunity to all such effects for 4 seconds. This ability changes depending on what type of pet you have, whether it's Ferocity, Tenacity, or Cunning. For the Ferocity pets, you get the essentially Bloodlust or Time Warp or Heroism buff for your raid. For the tank pets, you get basically a shield wall for yourself and your pet. And then for Cunning pets, you get this snare and snare removal, which is just awesome. Very, very useful even whenever you're just running in dungeons. I'm actually probably going to be running a Cunning pet quite a bit in dungeons, because it doesn't really affect the damage the pet's doing, it just gives you some different abilities. So we have Misdirection here. You'll see it's not on my bar because it was a macro, and then the macro broke, so I didn't put it back on a bar yet. It just redirects that targeted party or raid members, gives all your threat to them for 8 seconds. Definitely useful whenever you are pulling stuff. If your tank's like, hey, grab that other pack over there, you can misdirect to him instead. Very useful with Aspect of the Eagle, so you can go ahead and grab stuff that way. Muzzle is just our standard interrupt there. It is melee range, 15-second CD, interrupts a spell cast, and prevents any spell in that school from being cast for 3 seconds. Under pet utility here, nothing has changed. It's all still the same, so I'm not going to cover that. Raptor Strike. Vicious Slash, dealing 2400 physical damage. It does cost you 30 focus. This is your primary dump for your Raptor Strike before you pick anything extra in talents, and this does a considerable amount of damage. Again, this is your bread and butter, so you're going to be hitting this button a ton. Make sure it's on a comfortable keybind. Now, Survival does have Serpent Sting. This felt a little out of place the first time I was using it, because initially when I was playing it on beta, Serpent Sting did next to no damage whatsoever. Its numbers were significantly smaller than what you're seeing in the tooltip here. So it's 20 focus, 40-yard range, fires a poison-tipped arrow at the enemy, dealing 554 nature damage instantly, an additional 2,500 or so over 9.7 seconds. This apparently does scale with haste. The biggest thing to keep in mind with Serpent Sting is that some people are going to say, well, how can you fire an arrow at something you don't have a bow or a gun? You pull out a little hand crossbow from your offhand, and you fire off a Serpent Sting. Really cool visually, and pretty neat gameplay as well. This just helps you get a little bit of extra damage out there. Whenever you disengage, you'll typically Serpent Sting, and then harpoon back in. Really, really fun and engaging. So, Shrapnel Bomb, this is originally, I believe it's Wildfire Bomb. A talent changes it over and cycles through different ones. So we're going to go through the different ones here whenever we get to the talent section. Still have Tar Trap. All Tar Trap does is put down that big snare. It's 50% reduced movement speed in that area. This is absolutely great for kiting in dungeons. It's one of the strongest snares in the game right now. However, it does have a 30-second cooldown. But it's just so useful, it's completely worth it. Wing Clip here, this is a 30 focus, instant hit. It maims the target, reducing movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. So if you only have one mob, or if you see something's about to run off, you can wing clip it. It does cost you focus, and it doesn't do any damage. So this isn't something you're going to spam, that's for sure. You definitely want to use your tar trap over wing clip in a group situation. But if there's only one mob and you have the spare focus, it's not a bad idea to pop it. Last here, we have our Mastery Spirit Bond. You and your pet's focus spending abilities deal extra damage, and while your pet is active, you both regenerate. This says about 5% of maximum health every 5 seconds. This is incredibly powerful. Spirit Bond is super, super strong, and Mastery is a very, very good thing to stack on a survival hunter at this point, because it just takes everything you do and makes you better at it. I'm very appreciative of this change to the Mastery. I'm so glad we're not on Mongoose Bite anymore. Alright, so taking a look at talents here, you'll notice the tree looks incredibly different. Also, quite a few things here that you've probably never seen before. So number 1 up here in the top row, we're going to start off with Viper's Venom. Raptor Strike has a chance to make your next Serpent Sting cost no focus and deal an additional 300% additional initial damage. This talent is really great when you pair it with the other talent down there, Hydra's Bite, which we'll get to shortly. If you're not too worried about these other two talents, Viper's Venom is great. Specifically, of course, only when paired with Hydra's Bite. This is a pretty useful talent in general. I used it for a little bit and I did enjoy it because I was very focused on making sure I maintained Serpent Sting, but I found out that swapping to a different talent set worked out a little better for AoE. Terms of engagement here, Harpoon deals physical damage and generates 40 focus over 10 seconds. Killing an enemy resets the cooldown of Harpoon. This essentially gives us back one of the artifact traits. This is very, very strong, and if you are doing anything in terms of PvP, this will probably be your pick, just because of the fact that you're going to be using Harpoon as often as you possibly can to get around. This is paired right now with the talents that I've chosen because of an Azurite trait, which actually forces me to use Harpoon as often as possible to get bigger Raptor Strikes. So that's why I'm using this as opposed to the next talent. Alpha Predator. Kill Command now has 2 charges and deals 30% increased damage. Now, this is deceptively simple in that you have 2 charges of Kill Command and it buffs the damage, so of course that's really good, and it is. However, with the way Kill Command interacts with a couple of other talents here, this can actually be an incredibly scary talent and can do a ton of damage, especially whenever you're fighting a boss. This here will probably be your pick for single target fights and any sort of patchwork encounter, just because of the amount of Kill Command charges you're going to get out of it. So our level 30 row here, this is our AoE choice row. We have Guerrilla Tactics. It gives your Wildfire Bomb 2 charges, and the initial explosion deals 100% increased damage. Very powerful when you pair it with Wildfire Infusion in the bottom row, which we'll get to shortly. Guerrilla Tactics was the choice that I had normally, but I found that Butchery just totally outdamaged it at this point. The middle talent here, Hydra's Bite, pairs very well with Viper's Venom in the first row. Serpent Sting fires at an additional 2 enemies near your target, and its damage over time is increased by 10%. When you pair this with Viper's Venom, you don't have to AoE as hard, because if the enemies are going to live long enough that your Serpent Sting will actually get off its full duration, or even a little over half of it, you end up just with way, way more damage in general. So if you're going to be cleaving a very small amount of targets, you know, basically 3 or fewer, Hydra's Bite and Viper's Venom will definitely be your picks. If you're going to have more than that, though, you're definitely going to want Butchery. Butchery, 20 focus, it replaces Carve. It is affected by Haste. Strike all nearby enemies in a flurry of strikes, inflicting it says 1,582 physical damage to each. Has 3 charges, and it's an 8-yard AoE around you. Butchery essentially looks like Whirlwind. It acts very much the same as it does in current live servers. This is a very, very strong talent when it is paired with Wildfire Infusion in the bottom row, which I really want to say how good Wildfire Infusion is, but we have to wait to get there. I have a few more to get to before that. But Butchery will definitely be your pick, most likely, for Mythic Plus, if you're planning on pulling very big. The 45 row here, we have Trailblazer. This has been my go-to for most of the time I've been running around. Your movement speed is increased by 30% anytime you've not been attacked in 3 seconds. This buff is constantly up. Having that extra movement speed while you're leveling is invaluable. Even at max level, it's really solid. This will probably be your thing whenever you're running solo, maybe even in PvP to a degree. But for raiding, though, you're definitely going to be looking probably at natural mending. Every 20 focus you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on Exhilaration by 1 second. Just getting that reduced cooldown on your self-heal so you can save yourself if you mess up on a mechanic, or just to help your healer out in one of those sticky situations. It really can't be overstated how powerful that tool is, especially if you don't need the movement speed increase of Trailblazer, or if you don't need camouflage for some reason to sneak around or to self-heal. So camouflage is an instant 1-minute CD. You and your pet blend into the surroundings and gain stealth for a minute. While camoed, you will heal for 2% of max health every 1 second. So while you're camoed, you're going to get 2% max health from that, plus whatever you get from Spirit Bond. So you can heal up real fast. And because camo lets you sneak around in stealth, you can actually get around some mobs you normally would not be able to. So remember, if you're a hunter, you should probably be engineering so you can B-res people. Definitely a good call. So our level 60 row here, this gives us some single target options. It's a very, very weird row, though. So Bloodseeker. Kill command causes the target to bleed for 951 damage over 8 seconds. You and your pet gain 10% attack speed for every bleeding enemy within 10 yards. I'm not sure if this talent is actually properly working on beta, as I've been using it with kill command, and I actually haven't seen the bleed go up. So I'm not sure if it's a bug with it right now, or if there's some other talent that's canceling out the damage or not. But ideally, this should be your single target go-to talent, just because you're almost always going to have something bleeding from kill command, because you can use kill command so often. We'll have to see exactly how this ends up playing out. But if you're able to kill command even one target, 10% attack speed is nothing to shake a stick at. That's an incredibly powerful thing to have for consistent damage. So here we have Steel Trap. Throws a steel trap at the target location that snaps shut on the first enemy that approaches it, immobilizing them for 20 seconds and causing them to bleed for almost 9,000 damage over 20 seconds. Damage other than steel trap may break the immobilization effect. This is an incredibly strong physical damage thing. I was amazed at how much damage this did when I first used it. It looks like they may have toned it down and not updated the tooltip in the most recent build. But this is incredible single target damage on a 30-second cooldown. Whether or not this will end up being the go-to pick really depends on the proc rate that we get from Bloodseeker, but Steel Trap is an incredibly powerful tool for sure. If you're going to have a lot of things that are going to die pretty rapidly, Murder of Crows is an incredibly powerful pick as it is on live. 30 focus, 1 minute CD, throw that flock of crows on somebody. Deals 1,100 or 11,000 physical damage over 15 seconds. When that target dies, it resets the CD. It is super. I've been DC'd. Oh no! Mid-video shenanigans, let me tell you. So the biggest things I've noticed with survival, whenever I'm going and I'm running absolutely anything, is that you always have something you can be doing to either help your group or, if not help your group, then at the very least provide some sort of general utility for yourself. You have some setup you can do. Here you can see the beautiful load screens we have here. I'm absolutely thrilled with how this one looks, because it's very different from what we had seen previously. It was a really ugly placeholder screen. There we go. Alright, so getting back in here then. 75 row, we've got Born to be Wild. Reduces the CD of aspect of the eagle, aspect of the cheetah, and aspect of the turtle by 20%. This is a pretty boring talent, but if you don't need the utility of Binding Shot, and if you're not going to constantly be getting snared by things that you need post-haste to get out of, Born to be Wild is probably the best pick, especially if you know there's going to be a long periods of time where you're going to need to be out of melee range, so you can aspect of the eagle more to get more damage in. Post-haste just gives Disengage the ability to free you from all movement impairing effects, and increases your movement speed by 50% for 4 seconds. You know, we just went over exactly why this is strong, and it's going to continue to be a very solid pick if you're not going to be using Binding Shot for whatever reason. This is a very odd row, because you've got CC, some way to free yourself from snares, and CD reduction for your aspects. I don't understand this row entirely. It's very odd. I'm not going to say I don't like the row, because I love everything that's here, but it's just really awkward to have these choices here in this row. I don't know, maybe make Binding Shot a baseline ability, Blizzard? That seems like a good call to me. I'm just saying. Level 90 row here, this is our single target row. So we have Tip of the Spear. Kill command increases the damage of your next Raptor Strike by 15%, stacking up to 3 times. This gets a major workout when you pair it with Alpha, Predator, Bloodseeker, and your cooldown Coordinated Assault. You'll almost always have a Raptor Strike hitting for an extra 45% damage during that window. Incredibly powerful single target tool. Mongoose Bite is now a talent. It's been reworked a little bit. It replaces your Raptor Strike, which is kind of awkward. It's a 30 focus instant attack that deals about 1400 physical damage and grants you Mongoose Fury. Mongoose Fury increases the damage of Mongoose Bite by 20% for 14 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, and successive hits do not increase the duration. So it functions very similarly to how it does on live. It is just a little bit toned down. I'm not sure exactly where this sits in the hierarchy of your single target damage right now. I've used it once or twice, and I really didn't notice much of a difference between this and Tip of the Spear. So they're both pretty close. Mongoose Bite is just something if you really like the playstyle. I'm guessing you decided to keep it around for that. My personal choice, though, is Flanking Strike. 15-yard range, 40 seconds CD. You and your pet leap to the target and strike it as one, dealing a total of about 3,500 physical damage, and it gives you focus to you and your pet. This is probably the least interesting of the talents for me, but I really just love having the extra mobility that if for some reason I've already used Harpoon, but I had to disengage, Flanking Strike will get me back in pretty quickly. And the extra focus is very useful, especially whenever you're hopping around like a madman, because you've decided to play essentially Momentum Spec from Demon Hunters at the start of Legion, but on a Survival Hunter instead. So our level 100 row, these are all completely different talents. None of these are on live right now. So we have Birds of Prey. It's a passive. Attacking your pet's target with Raptor Strike or Butchery extends the duration of Coordinated Assault by 1 second. This essentially is, I believe it's Thermal Void for Frost Mages with Icy Veins. So just doing what you would normally do during, say, Heroism and your Coordinated Assault will give you extra duration with your Coordinated Assault. Very, very powerful single target tool. A little boring because it is completely passive, but it also just makes your burst window that much bigger. Wildfire Infusion, this is the most interesting of the talents for me because it adds a little bit of RNG to things. So you have Wildfire Infusion. It laces your Wildfire Bombs with extra reagents, randomly giving it one of the following enhancements each time you throw it. It will cycle through these. It does seem to be a little random. Shrapnel Bomb. Shrapnel pierces the target, causing Raptor Strike and Butchery to apply a bleed for 9 seconds. It stacks up to 3 times. When I was running this talent with Carve was not affecting this. I'm assuming that's because they just added Carve in the most recent build, and I don't think this talent's been updated for that yet, so I would assume that Shrapnel Bomb is supposed to reference Carve as well. That gives you a big AoE bleed that is incredibly powerful when you consider how many mobs you can pull and affect with your bomb as well as Butchery at the same time. You then have Pheromone Bomb. Kill Command has a 100% chance to reset targets Reset against targets coated with pheromones. Kill command spam is real with this. It is incredibly powerful when paired with Tip of the Spear and Alpha Predator. Very, very interesting setup to play as well. Oh my gosh, another DC. What are you doing, Blizzard? So something's going on with the beta servers here. That's alright, though. We'll get back in again and finish out that row and get my final thoughts in. At this point, I assume that they're just having all sorts of fun with some sort of little mini patch today or something. They just did the live Q&A a few minutes ago, and we got a lot of very interesting information about Mythic Plus, like that, for instance, the not being able to swap gear during Mythic Plus is apparently a very real and intended change. Definitely very weird for me, because I'm used to swapping some things around in my Mythic Plus runs with my group, but we'll just have to see how that goes, I suppose. Come on, load screen, you can do it! I have faith in you! Oh my. So our very last talent here, or I have to go over Volatile Bomb. Volatile Bomb reacts violently with poison, causing an extra explosion against enemies suffering from your Serpent Sting, and refreshes your Serpent Stings. So if you are running Hydra's Bite and Viper's Venom, Wildfire Infusion is probably the choice for you again, which, I can't stress this enough, this talent is so strong for so many builds. It's very hard to not take this talent. Finally, there's Chakrams. Chakrams is a 30 focus ability, 20 second CD. Throws a pair of Chakrams at your target, slicing all enemies in the Chakram's path for 1,000 physical damage. The Chakrams will return to you, damaging enemies again. Your primary target takes 100% increased damage from this ability. Chakrams, the first time I went through this ability and was testing it out, did an absurd amount of damage. Just absolutely crazy amount of damage. They've toned it down significantly. It was one-shotting mobs on the pre-made character, which should be horrifying for anyone who's actually seen one of the pre-made characters on here. With my character that I copied over from live here, as you can see with the wonderful Transmog and the Mage Tower Spear, it does nowhere near as much damage since they've toned it down, and it's now a more reasonable talent. All in all, I feel Survival Hunter is going to be probably one of the better specs early on, as long as you're able to pick up a lot of haste gear, because it does require you to have a pretty decent haste level to maintain the rotation and to get the most benefit out of your talents like Butchery, your dots in general from Viper's Venom and Hydra's Bite if you're picking that combo, the damage you get from Terms of Engagement, or Alpha Predator, Bloodseeker, Tip of the Spear thrown together. There's a lot of very interesting, very unique builds you get with Survival Hunter at the moment, and I'm very much enjoying them. Will I be playing this a lot whenever BFA goes live? I'm not entirely sure. It's definitely on my list of potential mains for the expansion, just because the gameplay is very fun, but of course we'll have to wait for tuning and see whether or not it's really something I want to play, if it's going to stack up well in the Mythic Plus scene with the utility and everything else. I really hope it does perform well, because it's been the lame duck of Hunter for pretty much the entirety of Legion. It looks fun, it's new, it's been reworked, but it just didn't really do anything for us during Legion, which was really sad, because it's a very entertaining spec. So I really hope we see a lot of Survival Hunter early on. Hopefully, we get to see a lot more variety in Mythic Plus, and I think Survival Hunter, with the way it is right now, is definitely on its way to doing that. So thank you guys so much for tuning in here and bearing with my technical difficulties of beta kicking me off a couple times while recording this here. If you liked the video, throw me a like. If you didn't like it, dislike the hell out of it. Throw me a subscribe if you're not a subscriber, so you can be kept up to date with what I'm doing here. I have a lot more content coming out this week yet. The podcast was just recorded, so that's coming soon. And I'll see you guys next time. This has been Gatsu, and I'll catch you later.